few years back, I was part of this ministry, this organization called Lead 222, and it was based off of 2 Timothy 2:2. That's where the 3 2s come from. And basically, it was a mentoring ministry, and it was meant for those who were in student ministry leaders to get coaching and mentoring, so that the idea was that healthy leaders create healthy ministries. And for a lot of student ministry pastors, there aren't a whole lot of support networks or coaches that would come alongside and really help coach them and guide them, help them avoid some pitfalls and things like that. And so this was an organization that I get connected to, and it's great. How I got connected to it was by accident at first. So this will date it. I received an email that told me if I was interested, I should fill out this form and fax it back to a certain number. And I was like, the first time I saw it, I'm like, I don't know. I'm a little bit of a skeptic. It's sounding kind of almost like, I feel like if I send this in, I will inadvertently be at the bottom of a pyramid scheme, right? And so I'm like, no. And so I just avoided it the first year. Second year, I got the same thing. I'm like, oh, well, maybe there's something legit to this. So I sent it in, and the number didn't work, and I kept trying, and the number didn't work. So then I started looking up, trying to find information on this organization and all this. Finally, I get connected, and it was legit and all this. And it was an awesome experience for me as a student ministry leader to have someone that would coach me, that would pour into me, that would help me make good decisions in the ministry. I could bounce ideas off of them and that sort of thing. And eventually it got to the point where it's like, hey, I would love to be one of the coaches. And there was another guy who was in this with me about the same time I got in, and he wanted to be one of the coaches too. Now, the reason he wanted to be one of the coaches is because it felt like in that organization for some people that if you were a coach, then you have arrived, right? You get special perks, and it just was like another feather you could put in your cap. It's like, oh, I'm not just a member, I'm a coach with Lead 222, and he was desperate. He really wanted to be a coach, and I was kind of like, well, I would kind of like to be a coach because I kind of like to pay it forward and just kind of help people, and if I become a coach, great. If not, all right, I'll continue to be coach and take advantage of this awesome opportunity. And so this guy is just like, no, I need to do everything I can to become a coach. And so he's talking to the leadership. What do I need to do to become a coach? What do I need to do? Hoops I need to jump through, people I need to talk to. And he's just pushing and pushing and pushing. And it came time for them to kind of make the announcement of who the new coaches were going to be for that year. I got, hey, congratulations, Dave, we want you to be a coach. The other guy got passed by. And I would love to say that since this was a Christian organization and he was a student ministry pastor, that he took it gracefully and just was like, well, whatever God wanted. Oh, no. No. I mean, he was fit to be tied. He was so upset. He's like, I'm going to leave. If you don't think I'm good enough to be a coach, then I'm out of here and all this. And it really was like, wow, baffling to watch this guy like just fall apart because he wasn't promoted into being a coach, because he wanted so desperately to be one of the coaches, to be that quote-unquote top tier and that sort of thing. And when he got passed by, oh my goodness, it was just crazy. And when I was able to talk to him like a few months later, I'm like, do you think maybe your response kind of showed the attitude you had to becoming a coach, and that's why you got passed up? That maybe your heart wasn't really in the right spot for what they're looking for in coaches? Could that be? And I mean, he started to light into me again. I'm like, look, this is what I'm talking about. You're so fixed on getting that title that you're not showing the heart of someone who really wants to train someone. And quite frankly, I don't think the organization wants to duplicate the attitude you have. And so looking at it, he was able to step back and look at it and go, oh, I was all about wanting to be something, to have a title and things like that. And a lot of us, we can get caught up into wanting to be in the know, wanting to be one of the special people, wanting to be, I remember in school, you could pick out, right? It didn't take long, even in a new school, I could walk in and within a few days, maybe a couple weeks, I could tell you, okay, I can start picking people out. Okay, here are the cool kids. Let's just go through, the whole thing, and here are the athletes, and here are the non-athletes, here are the band. We all are looking for trying to get connected to a group that we can kind of claim, and we can get caught up into, I want to be a part of a group so I get some notoriety. I want to be in the who's who and all that fun stuff. So I want to talk today about a passage of Scripture that talks about that just a little bit. And it is, oh, man. All right, so we're ordering a new clicker this week. All right, Mark chapter 9, verses 38 through 41. And before we dive into this too deep, so Mark is written in a format, this is just getting into the weeds a little bit. Mark is written in a format that is a biography. And it's an ancient form of biography that we don't use much today. See, a lot of times we can read like the Gospels, like Mark, and think, oh, so this is the order things happened. Not necessarily. So if you're reading through Mark and you're thinking, well, Mark said Jesus did this, and then next Jesus did this, and then Jesus did this, and you're going and you're thinking Mark's putting things in chronological order, might not be, okay? The order of how things happen in these forms of biographies weren't as important as telling the story that they wanted to tell to be able to give you the heart and character of whoever the biography is about. And so what they're going to do when they write this biography, they're not going to necessarily go in chronological order, but what they're going to think is, what do you need to know about this person so that you understand who this person actually is? Not just what they did, but who they are, what's their heart, what's their mindset, and things like that. That's how the biographies were written back then. So they might take a story that happened here and then a story that happened later in time and put them together because they connect nicely to give a good glimpse of who that person is. And so when we read things, it might be a little mixed up time-wise and all that. But anything that's in the biography, the biographer said, this is important and you need to know this so that you can understand more of who this person actually is. So anything you read in those Gospels, understand, I guess I'm saying this is valuable. Mark, when he was writing this, said, this needs to go in my written biography of Jesus because this will help people understand who Jesus actually is, not just what he's done. All right, so, teacher, said John, so he's speaking to Jesus. We saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop because he was not one of us. Now, let's back up a little bit. The order in the book says that the transfiguration happened before this, which is probably a good chance that it was, but if not, it's not that vital. But John obviously is feeling like Jesus' group is a special group, right? Now, if the order's right, there was the transfiguration where John is up there with a couple other disciples with Jesus, and they get to see Jesus' glory. And they're just like, oh my goodness, right? And then Moses and Elijah are there as well, and John's the one who's like, oh, we should build shelters and stay here forever. And Jesus is like, no, that's not what this is about. But so I'm guessing that probably did happen before this encounter, because I think John is feeling like I was one of the three that got to go up and see Jesus' glory for all who he was, and I got to see the prophet. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I am in, right? So John is like, hey, Jesus, I can almost see him walking up. Hey, we saw some guy, he's casting out demons, and we told him not to do that anymore because he's not one of us, right? Because we're in. We're your crew, right? And Jesus has this response. Do not stop him. Jesus said, for no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me. For whoever is not against us is for us. So here's John. Picture this. Try to just picture this. They're walking along. John, and it doesn't say what other disciples, it just says we. They see some guy actually driving out demons in Jesus' name. And they go up to him and say, you need to cut that out. Here's your cease and desist order, right? It's like, no more. You are not a part of us, so you need to stop doing this amazing, great, good work. And then he's like, good job, John. Way to go. Can't wait to go tell Jesus what we just did, right? And then, hey, Jesus, guess what we just did? We just stopped some guy from doing great work in your name. And Jesus is like, it's written down, do not stop him, Jesus said. I can just see Jesus actually, because Jesus, with the people he worked with, he had to have a good sense of humor, right? I can just see John's walking up and Jesus would probably already know what's going to happen, but John tells him, I can just see Jesus going, all right, let's go through this. We're going to have to work on this. We got a few years. I got a few years with you to try to get you kind of straightened out here, but I can just see Jesus going, John. No. What are you doing? I mean, can you just pause for a moment, John? Run through in your mind what you just said to me. Just redo that. Just picture yourself walking up to me and saying what you said. Right? And Jesus is like, no, don't do that, for no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me. Whoever is not against us is for us. John had gotten into this mindset of, we're in. We are disciples of Jesus. Now, I know that just being called at the age John would have been called, he'd already been told, nope, you're not good enough to be anyone's disciple, so just go and work your father's trade. And then all of a sudden, he's called to be a disciple. And man, this rabbi seems to be attracting big crowds. And oh my goodness, I went from just nowhere ever thinking I was going to be a disciple to now I'm the disciple of the most amazing rabbi I've ever seen, possibly even the Messiah. And I mean, ego starts to inflate, and Jesus is like, no, stop doing that. Next slide. Truly, I tell you, this is Jesus continuing, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward. Jesus takes John from a person casting out demons in Jesus' name to someone who simply gives out a cup of water in Jesus' name. And says, look, they're both accomplishing something good in my name. And so there's going to be a reward for that. And it doesn't matter if it's like this big grandiose thing of casting out a demon, or if it's as simple as quietly, without any band playing or any pomp and circumstance, just handing out a glass of water in Jesus' name. Jesus is saying, look, both of those are great things that someone is doing. We shouldn't stop them. And we should get rid of this whole, hey, they're not one of us. Next slide. Christianity is not about who is following. Christianity is not about who is following. It's not about us. Christianity isn't about the disciples. Christianity isn't about the church leaders or about denominations. Christianity isn't about us, the people that are following it. The focus shouldn't be on us. You know, we made a name change here, Hillside Community Church. We're wanting to be a church that actually gets out into the community, that actually reaches into the community, that our church goes out instead of making the community come in. And we want to do everything we can to reach as many people as we can with the love and hope of Jesus. And here's the deal. If what we do helps someone come to Christ and start attending another church, we're still good with that. Now, in most church growth models, no, right? We have gone through church growth models where it's like, okay, we need to do everything we can to gather up the sheep and bring them in here. You know, we went to the seeker-sensitive kind of service to make sure that we got all sorts of people who are enjoying the service and they become part of our church. And man, our church name is everywhere and people talk about our church everywhere. And I'll tell you what, I want people in Cedar Rapids to be talking about Jesus everywhere. Yeah. Do I want to be a part of that? Absolutely. Do I want Hillside to be a part of that? Absolutely. Do I want people to start following Hillside? No. And I think sometimes there's a fine line that we walk. Because quite frankly, in order to reach people, it's easier if they know who we are and they know our name and some of the things the church has done. That gives us some clout, that gives us some credibility to be able to have conversations and that sort of thing, right? But man, sometimes in trying to get our name out so that we can proclaim the good news of Jesus, sometimes we get our name out and then we start to enjoy that. And we like that people know about our church. And then we start doing more stuff that more people get to know about our church. And then they hear about the good stuff that the church does. And it becomes bigger and bigger kind of inflated ego to where we stop really focusing on pointing people to Jesus and we inadvertently start pointing people to Hillside, to our church. And we're more worried about them becoming part of our church than we are about them necessarily becoming a true follower of Jesus. I don't want to become like John in that moment. And I don't want us to say, hey, did you see what that church over there is doing? But they're not one of us, so we need to get them to stop so we can start doing it. Right? No. If they are preaching Jesus and they're preaching the truth, man, I want every one of those churches to succeed in reaching the lost for Christ. So I want you to hear my heart. As we move forward, yeah, we're going to do everything we can to try to get our name out there so that we can reach others, but it's not about us. It's not about Hillside. It's not about this building. That is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is that we humble ourselves, we die to ourselves, and we point people to Jesus. Next slide. Because Christianity isn't about who's following. Christianity is about the one we follow. Sometimes I wonder how many times God shakes his head at all the different denominations we have. Like, okay, so you guys split over what again? And there's some definite big things that churches have split over. There are some maybe silly things that we are just like, oh, I'll tell you what, folks. I say it a lot, but I'll keep saying it. When you get to heaven, I bet you're going to be shocked at some of the people who are there, but that's okay because they're going to be shocked you're there too. Right? I mean, we think, right? We think we've got it. I grew up Wesleyan. And I'll tell you, there was a time in my life where I thought, if you're not Wesleyan, or at least Nazarene, then you're lost, right? And man, what a tainted view of, well, you have to be this denomination or you have to at least be in this kind of thought theologically. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's not about what we think. It's not about the ideas we came up with. It's not about the rules we came up with. It's about, Christianity is about the one we follow. It's about Jesus Christ. And we can have our differences. Because the reality is, when we get to heaven, if we ask Jesus who was right, he's going to go, you were all kind of wrong. Because you all kind of missed the mark somewhere. Because if any of you could get it completely right, I wouldn't have had to come and die for you. And so I don't want to get caught up in some of these trivial things. I want to just say, okay, what's your view on Jesus? Who do you believe he is? What is your belief in what it takes to become a Christ follower? Because Christianity is all about who we're following, not about us, the followers. I think sometimes we can get this turned around. And we can start to get to the point where we start looking at other people and say, you're not doing it right. You're not one of us. So we need to stop that. And we need to get everyone to be like us. You know, one of the things I loved about student ministry and developing volunteers and things within student ministry is getting different personalities in there, because my personality, man, I click with some people and we have a ton of fun and we're laughing and we just, man, I click. And there's other people, my personality, they're just like, stay away from me. And I know that. I don't click with everybody. And some of you probably in this room are like, yeah, you're right. You don't click with everybody, right? And so I love just having different personalities within the volunteers, because I know, hey, you're going to be able to reach people that I can't, and you're going to be able to talk to students that I can't. You know, when it comes to music, I hit play. That's what I know, right? So if someone wants to talk in-depth music, I'm not that person. But, man, I loved having people that were volunteers that students could go to and talk about music with. You want to talk wrestling? I'm your guy. I can talk that until I'm blue in the face, because I'm a Penn State fan and blue's the best color. No, right? And it's the same when it comes to churches. Yeah, we might have different flavors of how we reach people. We might have different personalities that come through, but that's okay as long as it's about the one we follow. Folks, I want us to be so focused on Jesus and desperately trying to be a fully devoted follower of his, that our heart breaks like his heart broke for those who are lost. We don't see them as evil, awful people that we need to just stay away from, but we see them as lost brothers and sisters that we need to love and care for and help direct back to Jesus. And I don't want us to look at larger churches and go, oh, you know what, this is the typical, they just water down the gospel. That's all they do. I mean, they got lots of people, but there's no growth. It's just numbers game to them. I'll tell you what, I've been part of some of those larger churches, and for some people it is, but for the majority it's not. It is still about, man, we love Jesus and we want others, as many as we can reach, to find Jesus and to become a Christ follower, fully devoted follower as well. So we can't be looking at some of the other churches, and quite honestly, a lot of times it's about being bitter, and I don't know, we feel like we're being left out or whatever, and so we start to cast stones instead of looking at them and going, man, the more they succeed, the more we succeed, because that's when Christ succeeds. We need to be kingdom focused. And so as we move forward here at Hillside in the future, we're going to be doing stuff, folks. I'm just going to warn you. You know, we've left these chairs here in this style format for quite a while. If you remember, those of you who were here when I first got here, it was like, what is he doing with these chairs? I finally found my seat, and then he moved it, and my row doesn't even exist anymore, and so I got comfortable with something else, and then he changed it up again, and So we're going to get back to some of that, okay? It's going to get a little interesting. We're going to try things. We are going to be a church of experimenting, and we're going to try ideas, and some of them you might think this is the craziest idea in the world, but here's what I'm asking. I'm asking you to realize that the church leadership and those who are praying and working and thinking through what is it that we need to do to reach our community, our whole intent is always, 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 always going to be, are we going to be able to reach people with the love of Jesus Christ through this? We will never do something just to do it. We won't do something just to go, oh, well, this would be fun. Let's try this. There is always going to be an intentionality to what we do. There will always be a purpose. And that purpose ultimately is going to be, can this help us reach more people with the love and hope of Jesus? So when we ask you to get involved in something that you're like, this is weird, join in. Sometimes weird's fun, and sometimes weird, man, makes a huge impact for God. We may do stuff, even in here, that you're like, I don't know that I'm a big fan of this. Can I encourage you to remember, Christianity isn't about those who are following, but it's about the one we follow. And everything we do, even in here, man, it's going to be designed because we think maybe this might help us reach others for Christ and help us grow in our faith and become fully devoted followers. We may be making some changes, and it might be a little different, might be a little odd. You might not be a fan at first, but trust us. Will you trust us in knowing that the whole intent is to reach people, to be more like Jesus, that our hearts are so broken for the lost that we'll do anything we can to reach them for Jesus? So the microwave came out. Remember when microwaves were like this big, but the opening was still like this big, right? And so microwaves are out. My two brothers and I, we want a microwave desperately, right? Because you can cook things so much faster, and when you're a teenage guy, seconds matter. When your stomach is empty, you want to just fill it as quickly as you can, right? And my mom, for years, was like, we don't need a microwave. You can warm up things in the oven. You can warm it up on the stove. We're like, yes, we know we can do it that way, Mom, but there's a better way. And she's like, no, we don't. She's also the one who says we don't need air conditioning. And I'm sorry, Mom. She's going to watch this later. But I remember we moved to a new church, and they had the parsonage, and they were like, hey, we have some time before you move in, and it gets warm here, so we were thinking of putting air conditioning in for you before you got here. And my brothers and I were like, yes. And my mom's like, oh, you don't need to do that. I'm like, no. Yes, they do, Mom. It is their spiritual duty to provide air conditioning for the pastor and his family, right? And so we had no air conditioning because we didn't need air conditioning. And but I remember the day that we finally said, we're getting Mom a microwave for Christmas, which was a gift for us for Christmas. And she's like, okay, we got a microwave. I don't think we're going to ever use it. Oh, my goodness. My mom loves the microwave now, right? I mean, it's so convenient. You can even quick make bacon in a microwave. It's just, it's so wonderful. But there are going to be some things that you're going to look at us and go, we don't need to do that here at that church. That's crazy talk. What are you talking about? But if you stick with us and we start reaching people for Christ through it, then you're going to go, wow, what did we do without that? Yeah, let's keep doing that. So I know that as we move closer and closer to kind of our relaunch in September, I know that there is some nervousness for some, but I promise you this. Hillside will never, ever, as long as I am here and get to serve on staff, we will never lose sight of our ultimate primary goal. And that is helping people become fully devoted followers of Jesus. That's what we're going to be about. Now, it may look different. It may look different. But I'll tell you what, we're going to have some fun doing it. We're going to laugh. And I promise you this as well. There are going to be some things we try that we might go, well, that didn't work so well. Let's never do that again. And that's okay. Because all we're trying to do is try to reach others. Because we know it's not about us. It's not about Hillside Community Church and growing our church. It's about reaching people for Jesus and building His kingdom. Christianity isn't about those who are following. It's about the one we follow. Let's go ahead and pray. God, again, I just thank you for loving us the way you do. Thank you that you didn't have the attitude of, well, you're not one of us. You're not just like me, and so you're out. God, you said, no, I want all to be saved. Now, God, help us as a community, help us as a church, as an extension of who you are, God. Help us to have a heart that is burdened for those who don't know you, to reach out, God. Help us to not just come here Sunday after Sunday after Sunday and sing about you and listen to a message and go home. But God, help us to truly also as a church strive to make fully devoted followers of Jesus for those who've now crossed that line and said, yes, I want to be a follower. God, help us now also. Help us to grow in our faith and our relationship with you. And God, and part of that is, again, your heart for the lost, your heart for renewal, your heart for redemption. God, give us the heart, give us that passion. And God, instead of looking at others and saying, well, they're not one of us, help us to realize, oh, they're exactly like one of us before we met Jesus. And God, help us to introduce you to them in a way that truly shows your character, your love, your righteousness, your holiness, your grace, your peace. And we just thank you for what you're going to do in our lives and in your kingdom. And God, in everything we do, everything is built on you. It's not for us. It's not for our notoriety. It's not for our fame. But God, we are simply building your kingdom. You are the cornerstone of everything that we strive to do and accomplish. In your name we pray. Amen.